Welcome back to the Bet First Golf DFS show here at betfirstgolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined today, first up, by the man himself. You know him as the Model Maniac on Twitter and the host of the Back Nine Bets podcast. It is Byron Lindeque. Byron, how are you feeling fresh off of last week's tournament?
Feeling okay. Last week was an interesting week with old Victor doing his thing, Denny McCarthy coming out of nowhere, and then Scotty Scheffler going down in the history books as one of the biggest deficits between strokes gained, tee to green, and putting in the strokes gained era. Just an otherworldly performance from him. So hilarious, so on brand, Scotty Scheffler doing his thing.
And of course, last week you carried it with PGA Splits 101 himself, the great Ron Kloss. Ron, what about you this week?
Ron, we have got zero volume there.
Ron may be out of commission.
All right, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Oh my gosh, rookie mistake there. So yeah, I was just saying, what the last 24 hours, who I feel sorry for in all of this is our little brother to the north, Canada. 2020, 2021, Canadian Open is canceled because of COVID. Last year, the first LIV event was the same week as the Canadian Open. And then, of course, this year, the bombshell news of this new professional golf entity, happening 2 days before. So also no Canadian golfer has ever won their home event since 1954. So, I think this actually could be the year where that streak gets broken. Lots of quality Canadians in this field, and we have a new course to talk about, so lots to get into here.
Well, let's get right into that, because despite the miserable events ongoing for our friends in Canada right now, this tournament is still taking place around the weather. And as you mentioned, Ron, there are some course changes, a new course here to discuss. So why don't you go ahead and dive into that for everyone and explain what's going on this year?
Yeah, so Oakdale is a classical tree-lined parkland course. Never been played any type of professional event here ever. So there's a lot of undulating terrain. Fairways are narrow at different points. We have thick bluegrass rough. The greens are tiered and very sloped, and we'll get more into those later and how that's going to kind of affect play. But we have this long rough that people are thinking is going to be easy scoring, and initially, I thought maybe even we'll get to 25 under easily as a winning score. I'm hearing caddies are predicting maybe around 15 under winning score because this rough is just so thick. I mean, 5 to 6 inches, some of the longest, thickest rough in a non-major we'll see all year. And going back to the greens are another thing that, players are finding that could be a challenge this week. There's a lot of false fronts. There's a lot of tricky pin locations that are going to be used this week, especially on the weekend. So, accuracy, both off the tee and on approach, I think are again going to be crucial this week. The greens are a mixture of 80% bent grass, 20% POA. And these are the same greens at Oakdale that have been used for the past century. So they're full of character. Stanley Thompson designed this course. He's one of the most famous Canadian golf course architects. And so just kind of your old school classical tree line course. And so, another thing is the different nines are going to play very differently. The front nine is going to be challenging. On the back nine, players have already described it as, we could see a 29s for a score on that back nine. Looks like, those holes are going to be much easier. So, and one other thing, last year's Canadian Open was played at St. George's Golf and Country Club. This course, very similar in a lot of ways. And so will be interesting to see, how players deal with the rough and the scoring conditions.
I also know, Byron, from Ron's free course preview for everyone at betfirstgolf.com, which I always start with my research with, that yes, good drive percentage is of importance this week. And given those larger greens he mentioned on the back nine in particular, that approach play, whether it be from the fairway or the rough, from shorter range, 100, 150 yards out, is also going to be of importance. So how are you attacking this new course for DFS this week?
Yeah, I totally agree with that methodology. I think, the good drives gained is going to be a good metric, but also strokes gained approach with your long irons will be essential, because I think a lot of these guys are coming down. It's a 7,200 yard par 72. So with this thick rough in particular, I think maybe the bomb and gouge may not necessarily be as in play as we'd imagine. You could see a few guys, at least I'm creating that narrative for my player pool, that I'm going to be looking for guys that struggle with accuracy off the tee that can use a 3-iron or a hybrid off the tee to keep themselves in play. The rest of it, I think, I'm kind of projecting somewhere in the 20s for a winning score. You never know, but we'll see what happens.
Well, we can dive into everything else as we talk about the golfers individually moving on. And I want to start with the first 3 on DraftKings, the only 3 that are in the 5 digits of salary, in Rory McIlroy at the top at 11.5, Sam Burns at 10.5. And when I input the 5-6 stats that mattered most, in my opinion, for this course in DFS, Tyrrell Hatton at 10.2, who popped up as number 1 in my model, given 5 consecutive top 20 finishes, arguably playing the best golf of his life, not to mention lost strokes off the tee in only 1 of his last 16 performances. Just absolutely insane play right now. So, Byron, we can start with you. How do you begin building, if you're even starting, with this tier of 3 expensive golfers?
Yeah, I'm going to start pretty much with Tyrrell Hatton. He's mispriced if you compare it to these other 2 guys. I think he could easily be priced $11K and no one would be surprised. He comes into the field with the best recent form, over the last 24 rounds. Rory, yes, he's got that name value and all that jazz, but we're going to a course now where we're going to see a lot of wedges, and Rory's wedge game is, I'm sure this is a repeated thing everywhere, but that's the reason I'm out this week. 11.5, I think he's pushing in the 30s ownership-wise. We're going to see a lot of wedges. You're going to have to score with them. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. We've seen struggles with that. So I'm out there, maybe a little bit of Sam Burns, but I think I'm pretty much going to kind of, steer my way towards a balanced build with starting with Hatton and kind of going with some other guys in the 9Ks.
And Juan, Rory does have finishing equity. At least we think so. 4 top 7 finishes in his last 8 events. Also leads this field the last 3 months in strokes gained off the tee, which, as we both mentioned, is important for this course. So overall, your thoughts at the top, and can you poke holes in any of these 3 individuals?
Yeah, and look, Rory, it's not like he's been playing poorly. He's been in the mix at the PGA Championship, last week at the Memorial, coming down the stretch. He's in the mix, but like Byron said, he's just little things here and there. Wedge game obviously has been terrible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, though, you cannot deny the win equity that he brings to the table here. So, for me, it's a tough call for him just because, all these distractions, he didn't even see the course until this morning. So how is that going to affect him moving forward? I do think this being an easier course, I know he has had success more than on difficult courses on kind of easier scoring conditions in the past. So for me personally, he's coming in, I'm saying around 15-16% right now. I'm probably going to try to at least match the field just because, he's won the last 2 times here in Canada. I know it's a different course, but very similar to St. George's last year, I think. So for me, I'm going to try to at least be even on the field. But as far as my next guy, I'm really high on Sam Burns, who's second highest priced player this week. It just feels like he's on the verge of going on another run here. He was 6th at the Schwab. He was 18th at the Memorial last week. He's gained 3+ strokes ball striking in both of those events. And the key thing for me is when I run my model on, easy scoring courses, he is the number 1 player in this field by far when you get to these courses that are going to play, high greens in regulation, things like that. So I just think Sam Burns, when you combine his ability with his wedges and one of the best putters in this field, if this does get into kind of putting contest territory, I feel really confident in Sam Burns, and he's coming in, kind of around 16-17% right now as well. But when I see Tyrrell Hatton up at 23%, I don't know what Byron or other people have him at, but, that to me, Hatton has still, he's always in contention, but, you want your guy, if they're in, 10K range here, you want them to win. And so I just don't feel as confident in Hatton as I do in Sam Burns this week.
And that was my next thought, Byron, are you seeing anything that we need to be aware of in terms of ownership for these 3 players as of Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm seeing like 30% for Rory, like 28, 33, between my 2 spots. So I don't know, about 15. I mean, he's a very popular player, and 11.5 is not terrible. I don't know, Ron. Do you think 15% for Rory is going to be a thing? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about
I'm
that.
seeing 15, 20 where I see, and again, I think there's so much depth below him. Like when you're looking at, take Rory out of the equation, you've got 9 of the top 30 players in the world sitting right below him. And so I just, in my opinion, and I may go up a little bit higher, maybe 20, 23 in that area, but when you look below him, even Justin Rose being at 9.7, I think a lot of people are going to try to play 2, maybe even 3 guys from that 9K range. And so I just think there's a lot of different ways you can build. So I think it's kind of up in the air at the moment.
Well, let's go ahead and get there, because just in case people skip out on those 3 top tier guys, Byron, we then go down and we have Matthew Fitzpatrick leading off the 9Ks at 9.9, Corey Connors back in Canada at 9.8, Justin Rose, as Ron mentioned. I believe Ryan Newton also has an outright bet on Justin Rose at 9.7. Fleetwood has win equity and the way he's playing right now at 9.6. Shane Lowry should be a favorite as well at 9.4. Cam Young 9.3. Theegala at 9.2, and Matt Kuchar at 9.1. And as Ron mentioned, you can easily pick 3 guys from this group, because I can see any of one of these players winning this tournament.
Facts. I think, there's a lot of people that can do it here. I'm going to flag plant immediately and say I'm not playing Cam Young or Shane Lowry. And Cam Young is a ownership play. I don't trust the putter going into a birdie fest like this, even though he is one of the best wedge players in the world. We'll see a lot of that. The ball striking is going to be there. I don't know about the putting. We'll see. At 25% ownership, I'm out on Cam Young. Shane Lowry, I sold all my rainmakers. I'm out. I've got 2 matchups against him. It's just like full fire sale mode here. I'm not going to play this guy. I don't know about your easy scoring conditions for Shane Lowry, Ron, but I'm seeing some really bad metrics for this guy. He doesn't really ever get anywhere close to the upper teens on any sort of golf course that's easy. And he's also 81st in birdie or better rates on the PGA Tour. Despite being one of the best ball strikers in the field, he just can't putt the ball in the hole. So that's why next week I'll jump back on him at LACC when it's difficult. Go there. Guys, I do like Corey Connors, Justin Rose. Let's freaking go. I love those 2 dudes so much this week. The ball striking from both of them is just immaculate. Justin Rose in particular with the putter. It's going to be rocking and rolling. And then my little sleeper is going to be Sahith Theegala. I think he's going to kind of sneak in under the radar here, ownership-wise, in this 9K range. And if we take the drive out of his hands and he hits that little sizzling 2-iron, 2 hybrid, driving iron, whatever, he's also a very, very good wedge player. Like he hits it inside 6 feet 15% of the time from 100 to 150. So if we can start getting dialed, then we're looking good.
And if you're flag planning around that range, Byron, before we get to you, Ron, I want to flag plant Matt Kuchar. I think is my favorite among this group, at least in terms of what I'm seeing in ownership right now. Just in talking about what's important for this course, whether it be him being second in strokes gained around the green over the last 36 rounds in this field, or from the fairway and rough, 100 to 125 yards out. If we're talking about those shorter approach wedges, he is top 15 in this field in that category as well. So I like Kuchar at 9.1 a lot, but your thoughts?
I like Kuchar.
Yeah, so just going back to what Byron said, completely agree. I'm fading the whole bottom half of this 9K range. And Shane Lowry, by the way, is 54th in this field in easy scoring conditions. So, yeah, he's just so inconsistent with the putter. And I don't think, he's still kind of adjusting, I think, to the new caddy switch. So for me, there's 3 guys I love. It's Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, and Tommy Fleetwood. What I love about Fitz is that his irons are back. When you look, he's gained 5 straight weeks on approach. He went through that long stretch where he was just terrible with his irons, but he's kind of come back really strong in that area. 10th at the Masters, 9th at the Memorial last week. We all know how strong he is off the tee. And so we still don't know about this course this week. We don't know if bomb and gouge, if that will work this week. And that's another thing to think about, even going back to Rory, if he can get it close enough, where he's hitting wedge, and again, that brings the wedges into effect again. But for a guy like Fitzpatrick, he's one of the best players off the tee, gained in distance so much lately. Even the week playing before a major, I went back and looked, he's got 3 straight top 10s when he plays the week directly before a major. So just little things like that, and then if we go down here to Corey Connors, he's the highest ranked Canadian in this field. And he's the only golfer in this field that from what I read, has experience on this course. He's played in numerous, kind of in Ontario, which is the province in Canada they're playing in. They have these, what they call better ball championships every year. And so he's played in a few of these that have been held at Oakdale. So he finished 4th in my model this week. His accuracy off the tee on approach, I think, fits this course perfectly. And then going down, Tommy Fleetwood at 9.6. He continues to get closer to that first PGA victory. He's in the midst of one of his best stretches of his career here in the United States. He's got 4 top 18 finishes the last 3 months. The big thing for me, though, with Tommy is he's gained on approach in 10 of his last 11 events. And, I just think when we're looking at, 2 of his main strengths are with his wedges and with his putter. And so I think Fleetwood at 9.6 is going to be able to use that to his advantage this week. And, again, we'll see if he gets that first victory here in Canada.
So it sounds like we at least have hard fades as a group on Lowry and Cam Young for both ownership and performance reasons, which is good because that already starts eliminating some of that important 9K tier for everyone. Moving on, though, I think there are a couple other important options you can build around in the 8Ks with Keith Mitchell beginning at 8.9, another Canadian, Adam Hadwin at 8.87, Asia Maronk, I think might be quite popular at 8.6, Svensson at 8.5. I know you've talked about Hojgaard quite a bit on this show, Ron, 8.4, and a couple others here in the lower 8K. So, Ron, go ahead and get us started in this range.
Yeah, there's 2 guys I really love here right in the middle, and Adrian Maronk at 8.6. He continues to impress with each passing event, whether it's playing on the DP World Tour or here in America, North America, Canada, wherever. I mean, the results have been consistent wherever he's been. Coming off a win at the Italian Open a month ago, goes to the PGA Championship, very tough course, finishes 40th. Okay, then 2 weeks later, he follows it up with a 5th place finish back in Europe at the KLM Open. He's all the way up to the 45th ranked player in the world. When you look at the DP World Tour, just looking at their stats, he leads that tour in strokes gained off the tee. He's 15th in approach. And even when he's played here on the PGA Tour, he's pretty much gaining strokes across the board in almost every area. Really doesn't have a weakness in his game. And so I think he's a great fit for this course as well here at Oakdale. And then another Canadian I'm going to go with here, Adam Svensson at 8.5. He ranked 8th overall, which was a surprise to me. I did not think he'd finish that high in my model this week. But, thanks to his strong ball striking, he's got pretty good form both recently and long-term. And not only did he win this season, but, again, he continues to improve and just overall his consistency. He's got 8 top 41 finishes the last 6 months. He's doing it at elevated events as well. Finished 9th at the Genesis, 13th at the Players. So I do like Svensson, and then I'll wrap it up like you said. Nikolai Højgaard at 8,400. He made 15 straight cuts until that streak was broken last week at the Memorial. Data Golf has him as the 9th best player in his field over the last 3 months, and so he's another guy who's just ultra consistent. Whether it's short game, whether it's long game off the tee. So I do like Højgaard a lot this week, and those will kind of be my 3 main guys here in the kind of 8,400 and above.
Byron,
this is like the Euro range. We've got Aberg and Højgaard and Maronk and Svensson. I know he's not Euro, but it sounds like it. So it's a really interesting range. And if you kind of take a look at these really good Euros, their translation to the PGA Tour hasn't quite been there. So I think for Maronk, I'm out. I mean, I'm seeing like 15% on the guy. I'm not necessarily feeling that, especially with only 1 top 20 so far in his 5 starts on the PGA Tour. Give me one of those first, another one, and then we'll talk some business. I don't mind Nick Taylor and Michael Kim at the bottom here. Nick Taylor is just, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, I think is the phrase you use for a guy like Nick Taylor, where just every facet of his game is just inside the top 30, inside the top 40, just kind of can lean on any avenue of strokes gained that you want, and he'll be just fine. He plays really nice golf on easy golf courses. He's like 8th in birdie or better rates, $8,100, playing in Canada. So I don't mind what he's up to. Michael Kim also, some good form. The guy rattled off 1 million missed cuts to start the season, and now we sit with 2 top 10s in the last 3 starts for Michael Kim. So he's playing some good golf. And then Svensson is really interesting to me because this is like the first non-elevated event he's played in like 8 starts. He's just been playing these elevated events like non-stop and been finishing inside the top 40 and stuff. But maybe we get an easier course, easier field that he can really shine in. So I don't mind him this week either. I really like him a lot.
Ron, you mentioned that those are the core players above 8-4 for you. Do you have any thoughts on some of the lower guys in the 8Ks before we move on?
Yeah, the only other guy, and there's a couple guys here, even when we get to the upper 7Ks, that I think are going to be a little chalky. But for me, these are value chalk players. Even a Michael Kim, who, months ago we would have laughed at this 8K price, but he's been so consistent lately. Finished 7th at the Wells Fargo, which is a very long course, and then you go to the Charles Schwab and he finishes 6th on a shorter course. And so he's kind of proving he can do it on any type of course. Obviously, he's made a lot of improvements with his swing and his game recently. Very consistent, like I said, making 7 of his last 8 cuts. And again, this week, I think, if we're talking, this might get into a putting contest. Approach plus putting is going to be so key. And he's one of the best in the field when you combine both of those two categories together. Finished 9th in my scoring model. So I just think when you look at all those things from a guy who can make birdies, who's consistent on approach and putting, Michael Kim is my one play down here in the lower 8K range.
Okay, let's move on then to those high 7Ks, and let's chop it up in half because I think there are some pivot options here and just needs to discuss around 7Ks and low 7Ks. So Eric Cole, 7.9, and Brendan Todd, same price. I think those are two perhaps chalky players to be aware of, even though maybe we're getting some recency bias from Brendan Todd's most recent WD. Alex Smalley at 7.8, Aaron Wise 7.8, Matt McNeely 7.7, Taylor Pendrith as well at the same price. I know you've also talked about Thor Bjornsson. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ron, on this show before. Victor Norman 7.5. So some sneaky options as well. Go ahead and lead us off here.
Yeah, so Eric Cole is another guy here who, is ownership is getting higher and higher. A lot of people love him this week. Again, he's a guy that I'm willing to play and try to get different elsewhere just because he's just positive across the board. Again, doesn't show any weaknesses. He's shown the potential, again, to pop with both his irons and his putter. 4 top 25s in his last 6 events. Overall, again, 13th best player in the field is what I have him at. And so I just think, on a shorter course, I think it's a great fit for him. Aaron Wise, if we're talking about the ultimate, maybe leverage play here down in this range, for me, he's 100% upside play here. This is his 3rd tournament since he's returned from his little leave that he took there. He's got a weaker field. One thing he's really struggled with when he kind of had that downturn was he was just making bogeys and double bogeys. I remember that one, hit, I think 2 or 3 water balls on the same hole. This course, there's very few hazards on this course for him to get in trouble with. There's only 4 holes that have water, and it's this creek that kind of runs, and it's not even in play that much. And so I just think when you look at his wedge game, he's the 15th best player in this field from 75 yards to 125 yards. And so at 7.9, there's not a lot of risk there. So I think Wise is someone who, before he had his struggles, he was one of the best ball strikers on tour. And so maybe with the time that's gone by, this is a chance for him, for me at least, to buy back on him. And then kind of another guy here, I'll go down to Brandon Wu at 7,500. He's another guy who, to me, is kind of an ultimate boom or bust play. He's got 2 top 5s in the last 4 months, and he's also got a bunch of missed cuts to go with that. So, he's got this high ceiling. He's one of the top players in this field in birdie or better percentage. So, yeah, he's a guy that I like. Lee Hodges is another one who, had a great last tournament at the Memorial. A guy who, is, again, strong on approach and can get streaky high with the putter. So those are kind of a couple names I'll be looking to target in this range.
Byron, what about you in the high 7Ks?
Yeah, Brandon Wu, baby. Let's go. Woo all the way. Choo choo. Those miscuts, Ron, were at elevated events. Also, the weird thing is that's why the boom or bust. I think he's all boom in these non-elevateds. And, those 2 top 5s, I think we're at Pebble and Mexico, which were non-elevated as well, easier golf courses. So I love Brandon Wu on a course that you can get some birdies rolling. The birdie percentages are amazing. And he's also 10th in weighted good shots. So gaining half a stroke on approach in a single shot, there's only 9 people that do it better in this field. So he does a lot of that, which is awesome for a birdie fest. Brendan Todd, I'm out. How do you withdraw with a shoulder injury and then tee it up 5 days later kind of thing? So I don't know. I don't trust him. I also had a top 40 on him last week, which I'm very salty about. So that's a problem there. I don't know about, Eric Cole. You can't, how do you not play the guy, even at this kind of ownership down in the 7Ks? He seems like a bit of a misprice here. I don't really have too many other guys in this range. Maybe if you want to throw Maverick McNeely out there, you can kind of hope for a really good putting performance from the guy. He's one of the better putters in the field. I think he's one of the best guys in the world. Since Sam Ryder's kind of decided to take a step back since I started hyping him up. But Mav McNeely, he's a good small little spot here in the 7Ks.
I also like Aaron Rye in terms of long-term performance at 7,600. 16th in the field in strokes gained off the tee the last 6 months, 21st in strokes gained in approach in that span. So I definitely don't mind taking a chance on him, especially given the popular plays in Eric Cole in particular at the high 7Ks. As we move on, though, Ron, to the lower 7Ks, I think that's where it gets a little interesting because some of these players, I believe, will start getting a little bit steamed between Nate Lashley, Mark Hubbard. I think a lot of people have some outright bets on Siwoo Kim, who had a recent amazing performance this past week, Akshay Bhatia as well. So go ahead and give us some thoughts here in this lower range.
Yeah, so you named it. Mark Hubbard is a guy who, I'm shocked at his price on DraftKings, especially with the run he's been on at 7,300. He even at the Memorial, a course that really doesn't fit his game. He was so impressive there. He contended until he kind of fell apart on Sunday. But Oakdale is right up his alley. Shorter course. He's very accurate off the tee. And he thrives on these type of easy scoring courses. And so, he's gained on approach in 6 straight. He's just taken his iron game to a whole nother level. So I love Hubbard. Again, might be a little chalky at this range. There's a Nate Lashley, I think, is a guy you could pivot to. Detroit Golf Club is a comparative course to Oakdale. So he kind of also thrives in, these tree line, classical, easy scoring type of courses. Akshay Bhatia is another name that I like at 7,200. He continues to be a value play, here in the low 7K range. He's gained off the tee in 5 of his last 6. He's shown that he can spike on approach. He gained 6 strokes at the Wells Fargo with his irons. So, I think it all comes down to the putter for him, but I just think his upside at this price is just too much. And then Carson Young, I know a lot of people are on him, but he's another guy who kind of, when you combine his approach play plus his putter, he's gained at least 1 stroke in both of those categories in 5 straight tournaments. 4 top 20 finishes. And then again, when he qualified for the U.S. Open in Dallas, just 2 weeks ago, he was 17 under through 36 holes. So he's just playing really good golf. And so those are going to be some of the guys I'll be playing the most down here.
Byron?
Ron, I agree with all those guys mostly. This is a range that you can really look for some value in. Akshay, like you said, with the irons spiking, he's second in good shot percentage. So out there just dealing darts. I'll dish out a few other guys that are a little less owned though, because I'm a big fan of all these guys. They're a lot safer. But some guys that you might not necessarily want to put in your lineup that you maybe have to if you're looking for like a 2%er. Scott Piercy, very, very tidy on approach. He's been playing some solid golf lately. He's one of these dudes that makes a lot of birdies, but the results quite haven't been there for him. I don't mind what he's been up to though. Ches Reavie at $7,100. He's a little less popular, but still kind of moving in the right direction since I think the Bolero. He's just been crushing it on the greens. And it's been a consistent slaughtering of strokes gained for him when it's putting. And he's also very accurate off the tee, solid on approach. So if you put those 3 things together, Ches is looking like he's going to be thriving on this kind of a golf course. I'll jump back up to Ben Martin, a little bit more popular play, but he's also one of these guys that I have full confidence in. The around the green play has been a big issue for him, but I think we're going to see a lot, on an easier course, you can kind of hopefully get away with that. Andrew Novak has made 82% of his cuts in 11 starts. and he's $7,000 flat. So he doesn't necessarily give you that incredible upside, but from a safety perspective, he's right there for you. A bit more of a risky play is a Chad Ramey, who, if you kind of compare this maybe to a TPC Sawgrass, you can see, you know, like the shorter courses where the putter can light up. I think Chad Ramey is definitely in the mix. So those are some guys that I'm kind of leaning towards in this range outside of the popular ones that Ron mentioned.
Moving on to the dumpster diving, the 6K range as well. I'm admittedly struggling, Ron, to find a lot of competent options here. So I'm hoping you can help me out.
Yeah, so one guy I'll say at 7K flat that I think not a lot of people know about, Aaron Cockerill, who is a Canadian. He's got 5 straight top 21s on the DP World Tour. He does not play that much here in North America, but he's a guy who's just a great putter who's kind of improving in all areas of his game. So, you know, if you're looking kind of at the home country narrative here, I think Cockerill at 7K flat, you know, coming in under 5% ownership is a really good play. Sam Bennett, I was kind of shocked at how low his price is. You know, you got most folks salivating over Ludwig Aberg, you know, who's making his professional debut this week. He's sitting there at, you know, 8,300. And, you know, Bennett, I think, makes for a great under-the-radar play this week. You know, he contended at the top of the leaderboard for 3 straight days at the Masters. You know, ended up finishing in 16th place. But he's one of the best young prospects on tour. Struggled last week at the Memorial in his first event as a pro, but he has the pedigree. And again, looking for boomer bust type plays down here. You know, he's really accurate off the tee, which is, again, what you want here at Oakdale to stay out of the rough. So I think he's a great target at this value price. And yeah, like you said, it gets rough down here. I'm trying to stay as much away from this 6K range as I can. I think Kevin Chappelle, also at 69, is a guy who's made, I think, a bunch of recent cuts in a row here. I think he's a decent play at 6,900. You got some other names who have shown potential. You know, Eric Van Rooyen at 6,800, I think is worth a look. Callum Tarrant is kind of starting to come around again after his recent struggles. He's at 6,700. Probably the 2 guys I will kind of not go any lower than is Kevin Roy at 6,600. He's one of the best iron players in this field, has his struggles with the putter. But again, he's a guy who has popped recently on approach. And Ryan Gerard is another one, another young guy who just qualified for the U.S. Open at 6,600, who I think has, you know, again, the potential to have a high finish this week.
So, like Ron, Byron, yes, I've been struggling, but also Sam Bennett was the one that popped for me and came to mind, just maybe getting some recency bias exposure on him over the field. But your thoughts in the 6K range?
Yeah, I mean, over half the field is in the 6K range. So that's fun. You know, I don't know how that typically rolls out on other DFS contests, but we've got a lot of people in this range. So I'll start at the bottom. And Trevor Werbelow, would you believe me, in 9 starts, he's made 78% of his cuts. He's made 7 straight cuts before last week's miscut. So I love what he's up to. I've got a fly that's bothering me because Trevor Werbelow's at the bottom of this dumpster, but he's someone I'm really eyeing out at $6,300. Ryan Moore seems like he fits these plotters golf courses. If we're going to go with the accuracy, good approach, make some putts on a shorter golf course, Ryan Moore fits this narrative quite nicely. Andrew Novak is someone else I wanted to mention. I think I mentioned him already. But there's some other guys that I wanted to jump into here as well, but my thing froze. It's James Hahn and Cody Gribble. I know these are really random names, but Cody Gribble also. You just never heard of him, but 71% of his starts have been made cuts, which is all you're looking for in this range. And then James Hahn, he's a really, really good iron player when it comes to spiking. So if you're looking for a little bit of upside on approach, where a guy that's going to be hitting it close and making half a stroke on each shot, James Hahn sits 5th in the field, but then he hits a lot of bad shots too. So you got that going with him. And then obviously Sam Bennett is someone I'm really interested with this week too. I think he's going to really shine on a course like this.
Trevor Werbelow and James Hahn. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Ron, since we have 3 expensive players at the top, I think it's probably best if we ask who are your 3 favorite players in the 9K range, just in case people want to play the ownership game and build the core of their lineups around there? Let's say 3 favorite players from 9 to 7K. So that $2,000 range in the 8s and 9s.
Yeah, so I'll try to take the lower ownership route here. So I think Corey Connors coming in anywhere between 14 to 16% at 9,800. I think he's a great play this week and probably maybe the lowest owned guy in that range. Dipping down, I'm not going to be able to stay away from Adrian Meronk. I just think his game at that price tag, world-class player, has seen every possible course, all these different conditions. And again, it's a new course for everybody. So it's not like you have all these players, in the upper tiers who have all this course history here. So everybody's on a level playing field with course history. So I think that's to his advantage as well. And then I'll cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to repeat my Sam Bennett thing. I think at 6,900, I think if his ownership really stays below 5%, he has the potential to win this event. So, we'll see what happens with that ownership. But, those would be my three guys I'll be targeting pretty heavily.
Sounds like I may need to put in a sprinkle on a long shot Sam Bennett ticket as well. Byron, what about you? 3 favorite players in the 9s and 8Ks?
Yep. I'm going to go with Sahith Theegala. I think he gives you some great ownership leverage there, and he's the only guy that's played more than 5 events that's made all the cuts. So I love him. Brandon Hu at $7,500. I'll be playing a lot of this week. I just love him in a non-elevated event. And then my 8K guy is going to be Nick Taylor.
I like Matt Kuchar, Matt Fitzpatrick, and gosh, the third is hard. I think I may team with you, Ron, on Adrian Meronk, especially if we're going to get a little unique in the 7s and 6Ks. I don't mind taking on the ownership that Meronk seems to be carrying a little bit with him. And finally, favorite bet for this week, Ron?
So I haven't talked about him, and he might be a little popular for DFS, but for betting, we really don't care about that. So Brendan Todd, who finished 11th overall in my model for a top 40, as of this morning, he was plus 120 at FanDuel for a top 40. So really like that one.
And again, Todd, the same price as Eric Cole, so maybe he gets overlooked just a tad, since it seems like Eric Cole is slowly becoming more popular, but it is only Wednesday afternoon. Byron, your favorite bet?
My favorite bet is going to be Nick Taylor, top 20 plus 250.
You're very high on Nick Taylor this week.
I am. Let's go. Just well-rounded Canadian.
Good, because I have some leftover Rainmakers cards, probably with Nick Taylor out there somewhere, so I can jam him in last second. Ron, what else do you have for everyone at the site right now?
Yeah, we're continuing our office hours at 4:30 Eastern time with myself and Andy Molitor, Ryan Noonan. So again, if anybody has any Canadian Open questions or wants to chat about anything PGA Tour related, lots to talk about, obviously. So we'll be there at 4:30, and the usual first round leader, all that stuff posted on the Discord this evening.
Projections also coming to the site Wednesday night. Byron, what else do you have for everyone at the podcast and Rotoballer?
Yeah, I've got rotoballer.com, just all my articles out there, and then Back 9 Bets, pretty much everything has been published. And on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, the whole shebang. Loving this music in the background. Things are great. Happy Canadian Open week, friends.
I thought it was God Save the Queen for a second, and I was confused. But no, happy Canadian Open week instead. And again, hopefully everyone out there is safe as well. So enjoy the tournament. We're glad to have Canada back on the PGA Tour. And until next time, be a little bit kinder than what's required. See you then.